biotechnology and bioethics. Please let me know that. Is it visible? Yeah. Okay. So, ethics is more of a term which is related with the philosophical part and which is related with the thinking and the way we are going to behave with respect to some problematic questions. In our case, it might be related with genetic study, or it might be related with some drug trials, or like currently, if you say in our recent scenario, it might be related with the vaccine trial. So you always heard of the term like vaccine trial was not conducted as per the guidelines, ICH guidelines. Like clinical trials were not conducted as per the requirement. The number of participants were not enough, or the number of participants were given monetary benefits, and so on. And consent was not taken for something, assent was not taken for something. The consent was taken, but the consent was not in the native form, in the language in which that participant could understand. So it was not a proper consent. So the ethics was not clear, and so on. So these kind of things will come into picture when we are dealing with our biotechnology and recombinant DNA technology, or a clinical trial, or any kind of study which involves human participants per se. So that is a part and parcel of your project life. Okay. So, like, what is morally good and bad, right and wrong? These things we have to deal with. So, for example, if you have two groups, okay, under your study. So, group one and group two. Okay. So group one was given a placebo, and group two was given the actual drug. Now you can't tell them like for group one people, like the drug which was given to you was actually a placebo, and for group two it was an actual drug. Okay. And you will keep on studying it for a few amount of time, depending on your requirement, and then you will get your result. And the end of the result, you will compare and you will see whether the placebo has worked in a psychological manner, or a drug has actually have some kind of effectiveness, and that results in a betterment of a particular disease or a disorder for which you have designed your drug. So that kind of thing will be morally good or moral bad, because the actual group, like for in this case, the group one was never taking a actual drug. It is a placebo. So placebo is never going to be a drug. It is just going to be a formulation which looks like a drug, but it's not the actual drug. It may be a saline or a water for injection with some kind of uh, coloration in that, might be. And then it was given. So the group 1 and group 2 result, if it is coming exactly the same, then the psychology has plays a major role. So the people in the group one were thinking, okay, I have been given a drug and I'm going to feel very good about it. This drug is going to work like a wonder, and I'm going to get cured because of whatever I am facing so far as the symptoms. And they have shown the exact same result as group two. Then actually the drug has not worked, but the psychology has worked. But if there is a difference between group 1 and group 2, whether drug has worked and placebo hasn't worked, so group 2 people have shown the improvement in their condition, and their symptoms have been reduced drastically. So you could say, okay, the drug was working actually. So this kind of questions will come when you are dealing with ethics. Now, in case of bioethics, it depends on what kind of biological research and applications you are going to deal with. So, whether you are going to work on a stem cell, whether you are going to work on, uh, say, in vitro related thing. So, in that case, you have to think about it and you have to work on it. So, for example, like in case of IVF sector, they always say, okay, if you are going ahead with the in vitro fertilization, then there is a 70 to 80% chance that the mother will get conceived and the pregnancy will actually occur, but they are not sure of whether it will be a single child or a double or a triplicate, like triplet in this case. Okay, so like twins will be there or not, or anything, or whether this is going to be successful in the first attempt or not, so that is also not sure of. So this kind of things will always occur, and like I will not name the companies, but they will charge you hefty amount of money, and you are still not sure of the result. So if you can't afford, then you can't go ahead for the treatment like that. Then all of you must have recently heard of something called as stem cell research, which is upcoming field and it is growing at a tremendous like it has a tremendous potential in terms of application, but um, we are still not sure of what exactly it's going to happen when we are going to get injected with the stem cell, and there is a dilemma, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So there is no surety or there is no guarantee about uh, the working nature of stem cell when it is going to get injected. So if you have heard of Spinraza. So it is given in the people like children, those who are suffering with the spinal muscular atrophy, and they are given in the around somewhere around, if your child is below 5 years of age, then only this is going to work. Otherwise, it is not going to work, and it is under trial currently. Has been marketed so far under emergency use authorization (UA), and that is Spinraza. So like these kind of questions will always come across, and you will have to deal with that, whether this treatment is like if the child is beyond 5 years, then you can give a treatment to that child, or you can get a treatment for the child, like uh, if he is more than 5 years, but it may not work at all. It may partially work or it may not work at all. But if the child has a age below 5 years, then it may work. So these kind of questions also are going to come. Now, there are no simple answers to ethical dilemmas, like what kind of study you are going to deal with. So what kind of benefits you are going to give. So like what benefits you can provide to participants, then what are the facilities you could provide. But remember that whenever you are going to provide any kind of benefit, it shouldn't be like for the like it shouldn't be cause any conflict of interest, because for example, if you are going to say someone like if you are going to be a part of this study, then you are going to get 25,000, then obviously people will come for the study for the sake of 25,000 and not for the actual study, and they will complete the study also, but that is not ethically correct, because you are giving some kind of bribe to that participant, and they are getting lured into that kind of clinical study which may be harmful or which may not be getting conducted in a proper way, but because of the monetary benefit they are going to be a part of your study, and this will not be reflected in the larger population, because obviously your larger population is never going to come for you when you say like there are these problems with the current drug which I am studying, but you are going to get 25,000, so you can still join and you can complete the study. Obviously not. People are not that much fool, or they don't need that much of money for the like by sacrificing their health. So that study will never go up, and that study will never get promoted, and it shouldn't get promoted. So this kind of moral interest or this kind of behavior which shows monetary benefits should be avoided at all costs. Now, like there are few things which are called as like eugenics, where we say like you must have heard of there was a Chinese doctor recently who got arrested in China, and the reason was that about designer babies. Okay, so his company has manipulated genes to give a superlative or a additional intelligence and whatever characteristics the parents were needed and to design a baby. So he was a part of that project, and that was addition of encouragement of good genes and discouragement of bad genes, which was not allowed actually. The project was not sanctioned, and that happened. So the other example of like encouragement of good genes. So sterilization of mentally ill, those who were in the early America, few 100 years back. So it was happening over there. So if you sterilize them, then obviously they can't reproduce the offsprings, and then the population with mentally ill people will drastically go down. This was the approach. Then in Nazi concentration camps, they used to sterilize on the basis the groups which were against Nazis will not survive or will not reproduce, and their number will go down. So these were the things which used to happen, and they are still happening in terms of history, and history is repeating itself every now and then. Now, reproductive cloning is the one thing which we all know that Dolly sheep was the best example, and many animals after that were cloned. Now, there is a question of human cloning. So there is one company, Clonettes. It claims that they have a ability of cloning the humans, but again the question comes whether you really want to get a clone of yourself, because the clone will be copy of you, and everyone will have a different perspective and everyone will have a different opinion towards it, but you are not sure how your clone is going to behave. So we have seen many sci-fi movies, and we have seen the side effect of the clone. So we are still not sure what exactly going to happen when we have a clone of ourselves, and how the clone is going to behave, because though the genetic makeup is same, uh, clone may not be have grown up in the same environment or with the same family as you could think of, and obviously the behavioral pattern will be different, and thinking pattern will be different, and so on. So those will be ethical dilemma you will have when you are thinking about human cloning. It is just a small part which I have explained, but there will be so many things which will affect the behavior of the clone and thinking, and many aspects related to the clone of ourselves. Now, this is just if a baby understands like he has been cloned, then what kind of funny reaction he could give. So it is just an example of that. Now, apart from human or organism cloning, we have a therapeutic cloning. So in that case, stem cells are involved, and like we all know that what is a stem cell. So stem cell is something they divide into two parts, part one and part two. So part one will undergo differentiation, and part two will add up to its own population. So that kind of cell is called as stem cell. Okay. Now, it allows generation of human tissue and organs. So for like kidney, liver, for that also people have used. Then for muscle also they have used. Now understanding human development has made it possible. So in case of medical conditions such as with birth defect, you can use that stem cell, and you can do it in vitro fertilization, and over there it can work, and it obviously works, but there is a 70 to 80% chance. So that kind of cloning is possible. You can also induce a stem cell in a muscle, and you can give uh, there is a chance that muscle will develop into a proper required tissue, and that tissue can function the way we want. Okay. Now there are plantation of genetic diagnosis. These diagnostic clinics, they they diagnose the inherited genetic disorders which could be related to mitochondrial origin, or which could be related to chromosomal aberrations and so on. So in that you could think of like if a parent A and parent B, like one of them is having some kind of say thalassemia minor, mutation, then you could think of like you don't want to have a baby with this thalassemia minor, so you design and you tweak the gene at a genetic level, and then you have offspring which could be of designer baby origin, and or you could have a gender based decision. So all these things which are not allowed actually, okay, which could be a part of ethics also, and this could play a major role on developing our countries and developing our policies about ethics and research related to ethics. Now genetic testing is there, so we could go ahead with the genetic testing. So in case of for example, in case of USA, they have a genetic testing of person. So they perform whole genome sequencing of a person gene. Then they know exactly what kind of sequences they have, which could create a problem. So what kind of mutations uh, US people are having, and on the basis of that, that insurance company over there, they can either accept their claim or they can reject their claim, or they can give them insurance with a hefty AMI, or they can give they will not allow them to take the insurance from that company, and they reject their application and so on. So all these things also come into picture. Like in India, it is not allowed to get our genetic details to insurance company, so they just have to rely on the information. Obviously we shouldn't give them wrong information, but at least they are not having genetic makeup information from us, so they are not sure of what kind of mutations we might have, and we are also obviously not sure of what kind of mutations we have. So we are still getting the insurance. So that is the thing which you should focus on. Like it becomes risky when you give all your data to a insurance company, and then insurance company starts playing with you. Now, there is a chance for a potential genetic discrimination. So, for example, if you have a particular set of genes, then you have some kind of ability or you have some kind of characteristic related to that gene. So, depending on genetic level, if your phenotypic level is having some kind of particular characteristic, then your genotypic level will also maybe like this phenotypic level may be a reflection of genetic level, and on the basis of if someone knows your genetic level or genetic makeup, then they will start making groups against you or with you and so on. So there is a chance of potential genetic discrimination when you have done a sequencing or when you are going into depth genetic analysis of someone. Now, there are DNA profiling and DNA banks where they store your data, and that data may be used in a wrong manner or in a manner which you are not aware of. Though there are many rules and regulations for that, but there is still going to be a risk. We have transgenic plants, and in UK, we all aware of that. There is a food with demarcation like GMO food and non-GMO food. So the people over there can actually select whether the vegetable they are going to eat is a genetically modified or it is not a genetically modified, or by like application wise and process wise. So that they know, and on the basis of that they can do. But in India, if you have seen, uh, we may not have that kind of demarcation every single time. So we are not sure of the materials which we are going to take, whether it is genetically modified or not. Though it is mentioned in large amount, but still the rules and regulations are not that strict as it should be. Okay, so we are always under dilemma whether it is going to be safe to eat or not, whether it can cause some problem or not, or like if you are going to grow a GMO, genetically modified plant in this case, in the area which has a particular inherent species of plant or crops. So whether this GMO can outgrow that and could destroy the inherent population of the trees and crops which were growing in that soil or in and around area. So that is also a question we should think of. Then we have transgenic animals. So engineered animals, we can add them with the novel genes. So generally they are used. So like this is fluorescently labeled, fluorescently tagged rabbit, and whether they are like you are going to use them for say tumor suppressor gene, then you are going to check the efficacy of the like you cause a tumor in that organism. So for example, Swiss albino mice or Balpsy mice or C57 mice. Okay, so these are the varieties of mice which we use under research studies. Okay, and then you give them some kind of drug, okay, which is anti-cancer in nature, and then you study on those animals. So this kind of engineering is done. Then you also have a knockout mice. So knockout mice is a concept in which a particular gene or a part of the gene is no longer working, and it has been knocked out or it has been blocked so that it is not going to express the protein which it should express. And then that kind of study also can be performed. So that also comes under this. Then if you have a transgenic animal, so for example, if you have a transgenic chicken, for example, or a transgenic pig, then whether it is safe to eat or whether you are going to eat it or whether if it is marked as a genetically modified organism under food category, then whether we are going to eat it or not, that is also a matter of question. Then harvesting organ from one organism and transplanting into human, that will come under xenotransplantation. But whether your MSC recognition pattern or your body's immune system, if it is going to detect that as a foreign body, and then in that case it is going to generate autoimmune response when it is going to get uh, transplanted inside your body, and then you will have a high kind of immunological response, and that may lead to death. So that kind of thing you have to take care of when we are going to like we are thinking about when we are thinking about xenotransplantation, in which animal will be used for organ transplantation because of shortage of organs. And like then again the PETA, which will come into picture, like this organization will have their own rules and regulation, and then they will have their own ethical questions whether the organisms will be sacrificed for a human, and what kind of like at what cost we are going to sacrifice the animal, and how many animals will be sacrificed, and is it going to be a practice or this is for a temporary period, whether there is advancement is going to be in any kind of technique where you don't have to sacrifice the animal and everything will come into picture. Like, and one more thing, when we are talking about xenotransplantation, creating human viruses. So why it is important? Because there is something called a species barrier. Okay, so just to give you a brief example, like 2 years back, we had a Nipah virus, which was in Kerala, and it was from fruit eating bat. Okay, so this bat used to eat the fruit, and that fruit had the saliva of the bat, which was eaten by people. And then people were the end host, and they couldn't transfer it, and that's why Nipah virus has spread. So it crossed the barrier from bat to human being, species barrier, but it couldn't be spread because human were acting as a end host over here, not as a reservoir. Now the current case of bird flu, which all we are seeing, it also has a similar kind of theory. So it is the organism that influenza has reached up to bird. So there is a bird to bird transmission, but there is no bird to human transmission, and henceforth, unless and until there is bird to human transmission, there is no chance of human to human transmission. And henceforth, currently, though there is a bird flu in the country, no one is getting panic. So this is the thing. So that kind of cross species barrier, crossing the species barrier is easily going to be possible for the viruses, because if you are going to transfer the organ, and obviously you may not be aware of what kind of virus is residing, because the viruses which are of animal, are going to be different than what we are suffering from, and then those virus may mutate, and then they can cause a very big amount of trouble, and a different kind of infection altogether, which we are not expecting in human, when they cause the species barrier, when we are going to use that as a xenotransplant. So these are all things we should consider. And this is to give you a brief idea. Now, moving on to the next part. So, with respect to good clinical practices, which is a part under your ethics. So, this is conducted by all governments, and all institutional ethics committees are there. And apart from that, NIH also conducts that. So, your ICMR body in India, it also recommends good clinical practices, and DBT also. And International Communication Harmonization Guideline also promotes good clinical practices. What are the guidelines? So what is the basically good clinical practices? So it is a international and ethical and scientific standard for conducting biomedical and behavioral research involving human beings. So GCP is basically provide you guideline to conduct biomedical and behavioral research with respect to human beings. Now, why the training is important? It is widely accepted for human participants if you have a GCP training, and there is no specific protocol, but it is applicable for all the protocols which are going to be dealt with the human. So it is not specific, like good clinical practices is not specific only if you want to conduct a vaccination drive, or if you want to work on a drug, or if you want to work on a genetic therapy. It is not specific for that, so it is in general you can use and perform as per good clinical practices. Now, what are the good clinical practices guidelines? So ICH GCP guideline is twofold. First, it ensures right, safety, and confidentiality of participants which are going to take part in the clinical trial. So obviously, whenever clinical trial is conducted by any of the company, they never they reveal their data, and they publish their data, but in that data they don't mention the name of the people those who were a part of the study, and they maintain the confidentiality. And also, when clinical trial is getting performed, there is a clause of safety. So if the person is not feeling safe after taking a drug, he can withdraw himself at any point of time. So for example, if the study is of 5 week, and you have taken your dose on in the first week, and you don't want to continue after first week because you are not feeling comfortable, or you are having some symptoms which you think are not good enough to continue the study, then also you can withdraw yourself. So that kind of guideline is also involved under GCP, and the clinical research organizations, or the companies, or the pharma companies, whoever is conducting the research, they should follow that kind of thing. So that part comes under rights and safety of the good clinical practices related with the participants, and their rights are protected. Now, the data collected under clinical trials and reported results of clinical trials has to be accurate and credible. So that is also a requirement under GCP. So whatever data you are going to make out of good clinical practices, so that data shouldn't be morphed. Okay, that data shouldn't be modified. So for example, your group 1 is giving you 96% sensitivity, and group 2 is giving you 98% sensitivity, but your group 1 is your own drug and group 2 is the drug from the market. So you shouldn't change group names, like group 2 is your drug and group 1 is market, which is not the actual scenario. So you shouldn't change that. So this is not allowed under good clinical practices, and there is a strict regulation, and the company could lose its license or a permit altogether if they perform something of this sort of modification in the clinical trial or any kind of project which is involving human or animal involvement also. Now, there are federal regulations and code which researchers should be familiar with. So, there is one code which is called as 21 CFR 11. So, this section regulates electronic data and electronic signatures when you are capturing any kind of information. Then there is another code by number 21 CFR 50. So, this is enforced by US FDA, and this regulates your informed consent processing, uh, parts of the informed consent and requirement of the informed consent. So what is the informed consent? We will talk about that later on. It is basically, just to give you a brief idea, it is a permission which you need to take of the participant to allow them to be a part of the study. So if the informed consent is not taken for the participant, then you cannot allow them to be a part of study. Then there is a 21 CFR 52 uh, that regulates conflict of interest of the investigator. So, for example, if the investigator is also part of the company and if the investigator is also part of the project, then there is a conflict of interest. So, either the investigator could be a part of the company or it couldn't be a part of the project, or it should be declared to the participants and the company also, like he's a part of both thing, but he's not going to be a bias or anything. So that kind of conflict of interest is considered under 21 CFR 54. Then there is a next law which is 21 CFR 56. So that is related with the responsibility, membership, and operations of the Institutional Review Board. So IRBs are something which are involved at the institutional level. So IRB regulates and conducts the ethical proposals assessment independently, and their members will decide whether the project which has been submitted for the ethics, which needs minimal amendment, major amendment, or rejection or ethics waiver. There are few projects which doesn't require ethics, and like if you are not going to directly use the patient sample and you are just going to study the data, then ethics waiver may be obtained. But that depends on what kind of data you are going to deal with. So in that case, ethical clearance will be waived off, but that will be also in a certificate format. It will not be orally communicated. You will have a certificate which is going to get like which will be mentioning like this was the project of this so and so PI, and it has been given as a ethics waiver for the project, like that. Okay. So just a moment. So this is the kind of ethical regulations you have. Okay. Mm, so far clear? यहाँ तक कुछ डाउट है? Hello. Now, you could see this 21 CFR 312, the last law. Yeah. So, this section involves regulation of conduction of studies involving use of investigational new drugs. So, which is a part under IND. So, that also regulated by this 21 CFR 312. So, these are few rules and regulations which we should be aware of when we are dealing with the bioethics and the ethical part with respect to humans. Now, the next is 21 CFR 314. It is related with the regulation and application procedure for approval of the new drug. So once investigational new drug is cleared with the procedure and the clinical trial, then there is a application part which needs the approval. Then there is a 42 CFR, 42 CFR 2A. So these are dealing with the jurisdiction of the health department, and second part 2A deals with the protection of the research participants' identity. So that comes under your confidentiality part. Then next one is a 45 CFR 46. This also involves your IRB members, their function and operation, also their working ethics and informed consent, code of protection of vulnerable participants. So this mostly deal with the vulnerable participants. That means the participants which could come into influence of someone, and they will be a part of the study because of misguidement or because of wrong ethical practices. So that is controlled under 45 CFR 46. Then there is a 45 CFR 160 and 164. So that comes under Health Insurance Portability and HIPAA Act, basically. Portability and Accountability Act of Privacy Rule, which are enforced by Civil Right Office. So these are few rules which we should be aware of. Then it also has a 21 CFR 1300. So it involves the control and substances, use of controlled substances must comply with the US drug enforcement. So whatever administration guidelines are there with respect to use of the drugs and use of the therapeutic treatment, that should be with respect to 21 CFR 1300. Then we have 21 CFR 210 and 24 CFR 211. So that is related with the manufacturing, processing, packaging, and holding of the drugs. And this 21 CFR 211 is related with the manufacturing practice of the finished pharmaceutical products. So that means what kind of packaging is there and what kind of manufacturing practices, whether the plant is maintaining the required hygiene or not. And 21 CFR 211 or 210, sorry, it deals with the processing, whether every single time the raw material was checked for the microbial growth or not, what kind of packaging material use, the quality of that, and the holding of the drugs, whether the drugs have been stored in the proper room temperature condition or not, and so on. So these are all going to be a part under the rules and regulations for the drug. Then the summary key points, just to go ahead with. The good clinical practices is a international ethical scientific standard for the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording, and reporting of any kind of clinical trial. Then GCP has evolved, and depending on the past, whatever reports we had, so depending on the participants' response, it has been modified. Uh, GCP practical guidelines also provide a fair and scientifically sound conduct of research studies, which involves human participants, and therefore all studies should be conducted according to GCP. Uh, all the personals like PI of the project or the sponsor of the project or a co-PI of the project, they should submit all the required documents before starting the clinical trial. Then all the rules and regulation under GCP should be followed, and like additional policies apart from standard GCP or a international GCP guideline, the additional policies depending on your state, country, region or religion or area, you can imply and you can perform the uh, clinical trials in your area or in your locality as per the requirement. So this is to give you a brief idea about bioethical part and the introduction of bioethics. So this was for today's lecture, and we will stop for today's lecture over here.